Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from FFScout.co.uk. My name is David and today we're going to have a look at how my team got on in Game Week 9 and what I am planning to do for Game Week 10. We have arrived at a key juncture in the season where an informed player who got a goal and an assist in a Monday night fixture and is playing once again on the first match of the next game week on Friday night is all of a sudden on the chopping block for lots of teams. That is, of course, one Son Heung-min. A lot of people without Bukayo Saka. I am one of those people, and because that's a dilemma that I'm dealing with this week, and a lot of other people out there are thinking, do I really want to sell Son to get to that midfielder I don't have? Because in some cases, some people are looking to use him to get to Salah, for example. I thought I'd go into a bit of detail about what I'm doing with my team in the hope that it helps some of you guys out there. Now, among the many things on Fantasy Football Scout that can help you guys out there is, of course, the members area, where a lot of the data that I'm going to go into in this video comes from. And as I always say, if you want the opportunity to have a look at this data to perhaps answer some of the questions that maybe we don't have the time in the video or editorial schedule to go into, and because it perhaps may be very niche and very specific to your team, then of course the membership is the best way to sort that out, because then you can go into the members area yourself and have a look at some of the calculations in your own time. And I have it on good authority that the 30% off the pre-season price discount for that membership is running out soon, so make sure you get yourself sorted in time for that Game Week 10 deadline. And of course, don't forget, it is a Friday night deadline, so it's coming a little bit sooner than we have been used to in the last couple of weeks. We've had a good run of Saturday deadlines in a row. Now, the most recent one of those, of course, was Game Week 9, and I have to say, very, very happy with how I got on in that particular round of fixtures, straight back into it from the international break, and very happily managed to roll a transfer once again, and despite effectively in the end only playing with 10 players, I've got 89 points. I've gone up another 50 or so K places to 102K, so very, very happy with the progress that my team is making, especially, as I said, with only the 10 players in effect. Now, I came into this one with the thought I could maybe sell Botman, because the prognosis on him was not particularly, well, actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. It was not particularly good after the match, but before the match there was a possibility that he might play, but it was still a bit dicey, so I thought could sell him. But then I looked at what I needed to do for Game Week 10. I looked at there being some bigger fixture swings towards Brighton, towards Arsenal, and towards Liverpool as well, which we'll talk about in this video, and felt that I would probably need the 2 free transfers for Game Week 10 to aim my team in the right direction. And I started Botman in the hope that he was going to play, and of course then after the deadline it was when we discovered that Eddie Howe thought that the best way to handle a Premier League press conference is to hide the fact that Botman was actually going to be out for several weeks. So cheers for that one, Eddie. But as I said, it meant that I was playing with 10 players, because Anderson did come in, of course, but he got 0 points because Newcastle scored 4 goals against Crystal Palace. Outside of that, though, I should stop moaning, shouldn't I? Because I did have quite a good week. So Van de Ven got me another 6, Cash got me 2, 9 for Maddison, 2 for Diaby, 14 for Son, 16 for Salah, and of course holding on to Mbermo for that one last chance. The last chance saloon at home to Burnley paid off. Goal and assist for him, 14 points. He was my biggest gain player of the game week according to livefpl.net, which I've got on the screen right now. I gained 11.10 of his points on those around me, because everyone having sold him already meant that, incredibly enough, he was one of my biggest differentials for this game week, officially so, not even just in an anecdotal sense, because I'm not seeing him in too many teams in social media, also from a data perspective as well, because just 20.7% of people around me had Mbermo for this game week, so he was a big part of where the green arrow came from. Then we had 9 points for Alvarez, 8 points for Haaland, captain, and doubled up to 16 for a total of 89 points, and 2 free transfers heading in to Game Week 10. Now, of course, the dilemma that I've now got is what to do about Son, as I've already mentioned. Now, I'll stick my bus team on the screen for now. This is without any transfers being made, so it is a little bit messy at the moment. So Flecken back into goal. To be honest, between Turner and Flecken this game week, it's a bit of a tricky one. I think neither one of them scores particularly highly. I don't really think it's going to matter which one I put in. At some point, I'm going to fix my goalkeeper problem, but not this week, because one of the lessons I'm starting to learn about how this season is going is that sometimes if you've got some minor issues with your team, or perhaps, I've had 2 flags. I've got Botman and Estupinan. I've managed to carry both of them through the last few weeks and continue to make gains all the while, is focusing those transfers on where they're going to do the most work rather than necessarily selling players for the sake of it just because they have a flag. If you can bench them, if you can afford to bench them, then I think you should, because saving those transfers for bigger upside opportunities seems to be working out for me so far this season. And it's teaching me new lessons I'd never really thought I would learn in FPL, because normally, I've always been, a real purist for a flagless team. Or a full squad. Now, I think that those kind of attitudes are going to be really important over Christmas, when we have lots of fixtures piling up on top of each other. But actually knowing that I can carry a couple of injured players on my bench through some of these game weeks and still do well, based around making sure that I'm using those transfers to chase upside in the attacking spots perhaps, and selling players who are fit and probably going to play. I just don't like their fixture and I think someone else could do better. That is working out for me. And so with that in mind, that's why I'm not going to change my goalkeeper situation this week. It needs some work. But does it need some work right now? Not really. When I've got other issues to solve with, perhaps maybe just tapping into the fixtures a little better. So at the moment, Botman, Van der Ven, Cash is my back three. And the reason why Botman is where he is because I might sell him. So that's a reminder. Sell him because he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. I might not. We'll get onto that in just a minute. Maddison and Burmo, Diaby, Salah and Son is my midfield. Now you'll notice that the captain's armband is on Son. That is not because I think Son is the best captain asset this week, and we'll have a look at why in just a second. Haaland and Alvarez up front, and then a bench of Turner, Archer, Anderson, and Estupinian for now. Now, the reason why the captain's armband is on Son is because I really want to sign Bukayo Saka back. And, I want him back in my team. He's got a great fixture this week, and I also think I want to captain him as well. So then it means that when I hopefully sell Son for Saka ahead of Friday's deadline, then it means that the armband's already going to be on Saka, just in case there's any crashes on the website. And so, that's the big issue people are dealing with. It was a lot easier of an issue to think about before Son went and did a madness on Monday night. I thought maybe I'd get perhaps a goal out of him. Wasn't actually expecting as much as I got, and it makes it really difficult. But I'm quite happy with the way that's gone, because I think it's going to make people, when lots of people have to make difficult decisions about a big asset in FPL, it can often lead to really nice opportunities, because I do think that there's a good chance that Saka can outscore Son this week by such a margin that bringing him in and captaining him will really make a big difference. So let's have a look at the two players in comparison then for this week in particular. We'll start off with this week and then we'll move on to the next few weeks, because obviously I'm not the sort of person who just wants to bring in someone for 1 week and captain them just for that. I've got other times in the next few weeks where I feel like I'd rather have Saka than Son. So we'll start with the short term, then we'll move on to the season ticker and have a look at a little bit long term as well. Now, over the last 4 matches, can't deny that Son has been in good form. And I fully appreciate that selling Son is selling someone who is playing well at the moment. And his underlying stats match that as well. 9 shots in the box, 4 big chances, 8 on target. He's played 8 key passes, so he's created 8 chances, and 3 of those have been big. An XGI over the last 4 matches of 3.01. That's not bad. That's pretty good. And his minutes per a lot of those is better than Saka's. I will completely admit that. Because he has actually played slightly fewer minutes. He had his minutes, of course, managed against Fulham. That's obviously because they had the Friday night game coming up, which is a bit of an odd one, to play the Monday night game in one game week and then play the Friday night game in the next one. But yeah. And then Saka, his numbers are still good. We can't deny that. We have got him having also played 8 key passes. 2 of them were big. 4 shots in the box, that is less than Son. 3 big chances, that is also less than Son. And 4 shots on target, also less than Son. Now, his expected goal involvement, however, is 2.85, which is not really that far off the South Korean. Of course, he has penalties involved in that as well. Now, there's a couple of mitigating factors here. We have to look at who those 2 teams have played over the last 4. That's a really important thing to look at. Now, Spurs have had Fulham and Luton in their last 2. They have also had Liverpool and Arsenal in that time, but Liverpool's defence hasn't been amazing, and the North London derby sometimes is hard to factor into some of these models just because it's an unpredictable game with always lots of goals. Now, Arsenal have, I would say, in my opinion, had much harder fixtures in this run. They've played Chelsea and Man City over the last 2. 2 of the best performing defences this season, it has to be said, and we'll have a look at some numbers in a minute. Of course, you've got Bournemouth in Gameweek 7 in there. And then the North London derby for them also. I do think that the defences of the teams that Arsenal have played have been better than the defences of the teams that Spurs have played on the whole. And of course, the last time that they had a more favourable fixture, Arsenal, Saka did of course get himself a goal in that trip to Bournemouth, where we saw him signing autographs for players before the game. He only got off the bus, if you remember back that far. So effectively what I'm trying to say here is I actually think that these two guys are both in a relatively similar statistical position. Slightly better for Son, not quite so good for Saka. But actually the fixtures probably just readjusts them to be about the same level. So yeah, as I said, I fully appreciate I'm selling a player who's in good form here, but I sense an opportunity. I sense an opportunity here, and last season, between January and May, I went from 800k to 10k in about 4 months by basically just chasing windows of opportunity, in a kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go. I was on course for my worst ever season and I don't have my best ever season by just chasing opportunities, and I want to give it a go again because my team is doing so well at the moment. I feel like I can take a couple of risks. I feel like I've banked a lot of points already. I've banked a decent rank so far, and I just want to see if I can push on, kick on, and do something that's just going to help push me up even higher. And so the reason why I think the opportunity is now is the second part of what's on the screen, which is this current fixture for this game week. Now, these are two teams' defences. On the left-hand side, we have Crystal Palace in home matches this season. And on the right-hand side, we have Sheffield United in away matches this season. Because, of course, Spurs are going away to Selhurst Park and Arsenal are hosting Sheffield United. And the contrast between these two teams, between Crystal Palace at home and Sheffield United away, is miles apart. So, on average this season, Crystal Palace have conceded 13 shots per home game. Sheffield United have conceded 21.2 shots per away game. In terms of whether or not that's in the box, 9 in the box for conceded for Palace, 13.5 for Sheffield United. Whether or not it was on target, 4.2 for the Eagles, 7.0 for the Blades. And then big chances, 1.8 per game conceded at home for Palace, 3 per game conceded away from home for Sheffield United. So it's just a huge, huge contrast between these two defences, and that's why I just think there's a massive opportunity here to bring Saka in. And I actually think that Saka is the best captaincy candidate this week because in terms of returns and effects on penalties, he is in a similar position to your Sons, your Salahs and your Haalands, but he's the one with the best fixture. And that's why I want to captain him for this one. So we'll just move on to what that looks like in the next coming weeks. It's not just this game week coming up, where I think Saka has just got an infinitely better chance of a big, big haul than Son does, because next week Spurs have to host Chelsea, which I think is going to be actually quite a low-scoring game based on Chelsea's defence so far this season. Now, admittedly, Arsenal are going to play Newcastle in game week 11, but they then play Burnley in game week 12, who are also in a similar position to Sheffield United defensively so far this season. And I feel like that also is the best captaincy option for game week 12 for Saka. Now, admittedly, in game week that's 12, Spurs are facing Wolves. That's quite a good one. Now, Liverpool, they host Brentford in that one. Man City are away to Chelsea. Now, I'm not averse to perhaps even selling Salah to get Son back in. I feel like with these 4 premium players we've got in attack, hopping between them around these fixtures, provided you can do it in such a way that's not going to damage your team and you're not having some fires elsewhere, I think is definitely worth thinking about. But yeah, it just looks like low-hanging fruit with Saka for this particular game week. And as I said, having Son for game week 11, I'm actually even more concerned about than I am about having him for game week 10 for reasons we're about to have a look at now. Now, this is teams' defences over the last 4 matches, and we track this week by week on these videos, and Chelsea currently remain in the top 3 for fewest big chances conceded over their last 4 matches, which continues to be impressive when you consider that in their last game they faced Arsenal, who have been good goal scoring form this season. And so yeah, I really do think that is going to be a game where Spurs are going to struggle to really hit the heights that they would against Fulham and Luton, for example. And so, yeah, these next 2 games in particular, I'm just not that excited about owning Son. I think there's better opportunities elsewhere in those 2 particular game weeks. Now, you'll, of course, notice that Newcastle are top of the tree for defensive stats over that time. 2 big chances conceded in that period of the campaign, which brings me on to my next issue, which is, of course, Botman being injured. Now, it made total sense to get Botman. If you've got Botman, you're probably frustrated right now, and I'm looking for a replacement. Now, this is an opportunity now for me to talk about my defence, because it is tricky. It is tricky. I've got another midfield transfer I'd love to make, but I might have to make this defensive transfer this week because this is the weakest my defence has looked in some time. Now, if Botman doesn't play, which seems likely, then, of course, Anderson's going to have to come in again, and then my back 3 is going to be Cash against Luton, which is fine. Van der Ven away at Palace, which I think is also okay, because Palace have been a little bit shaky in front of goal of late, especially with that Elise and Eze. And then Anderson at home to Spurs, which, whilst I've just said right there that I don't like the idea of Son facing Crystal Palace, because, there's possible chance of a Palace clean sheet based on how well they've played this season. Still don't like the idea of having to rely on that prediction for Anderson to get points. And, starting Anderson and Van de Ven, I mean, I kind of sat there thinking, I kind of want a 0-0 here. Which I personally don't actually think is on the cards. I think a low-scoring win for either side, I think, is what is most likely. Anderson, Van de Ven, cash, that's not good enough. The problem is that if I sell Botman to get another Newcastle defender like Burn, that's going to give me a decent fixture this week away at Wolves, but then, of course, next week is going to give me Arsenal, and then I would probably want to bench my Newcastle defender for that week. And it's worth clarifying, I can't get to Trippier. If you want more information on sort of like some of the reasons why, the most recent episode of General's Orders, me and Mark go into some detail about no Trippier versus no Salah teams, and actually they're kind of performing as well as each other at the moment, and so I'm happy with my current choice there. So I can't really get to him. So the Burn is the only one I could feasibly get to from a financial perspective. But then that just means I would want to bench him the following week, and then I'm still kind of left with a bit of a short-handed defensive issue. And the other thing actually is next week is that Anderson can come back in next week. Cash is going to face Forest, that's fine. It's then also Spurs, who I don't want to start Van de Ven next week. This is one of the reasons why I was kind of a bit more interested in one of their centre-backs and one of their full-backs, because then I can bench them for the bad fixtures, of which there's a couple coming up. Chelsea at home for them. So I would need to bench the Newcastle defender against Arsenal and also the Spurs defender against Chelsea, which leaves me with only 2 defenders I actually want to start, because Estupiñán probably still isn't going to be back by then, although fingers crossed. He might be. I personally don't think that doing Botman to Burn is going to give me enough long-term rotating possibilities in my defence to be able to focus on some of those forward transfers. Arsenal I've also looked at as well, because Gabriel at home to Sheffield United looks really juicy. But then again, next week it's Newcastle, so I would probably want to bench my Arsenal defender for that one. Again, leaves me the same problem. I would need to bench 2 of my defenders, start the other 2, and then just hope Estupiñán's fit by then. So the only defender that I've kind of got my eye on, and I've also mentioned here that Liverpool's defence hasn't been amazing this year, but we'll just go back to the fixtures, because this is probably where it will become a little bit more clear. I need a defender that I'd be happy to start both of the next 2 game weeks if I'm going to replace Botman. It isn't Newcastle. It isn't Arsenal. When you scroll down that list of teams on the season ticker, arguably it's Liverpool. Nottingham Forest at home, Luton away. So, bearing in mind that Tsimikas, similar price to Botman, a little bit cheaper actually, is definitely going to be playing, we think, for most of the games while Robertson is out, and Robertson looks to be out for some time. He's the most likely person that I bring in defence if I make a defensive transfer. Now, the dilemmas continue here, because I also want to chase some opportunity elsewhere in midfield, and it is, of course, in getting rid of Mbeumo and bringing in Mitoma, because we'll just go back to the season ticker again, and Brighton are second top on the fixture ticker for the next 6 matches. Fulham at home, Everton away, Sheffield United at home, Forest away, Chelsea away in Game Week 14, not so nice, Brentford at home in Game Week 15, a little bit more attractive. But those next 4 for Brighton look really, really good. It's time for the Seagulls to get back on the radar, back in the transfers in category for a lot of teams, whereas Brentford in that time, 3rd worst on the season ticker, Chelsea away, West Ham at home, Liverpool away, Arsenal at home, Luton at home, and then Brighton away. That run makes them the 3rd worst team for fixture difficulty in that time. And so it feels like an easy switch to go from Mbeumo to Mitoma. A couple of other numbers as well. I mean, Mitoma looked incredible against Man City. He was actually the best player in that game from a goal threat perspective. More shots on goal than any other player in that match, which includes Haaland. More shots in the box than him as well. More shots on target. Looked really, really good. And yeah, over the last 4 matches, 7 shots in the box, 5 big chances, 4 on target. In terms of the number of big chances, only Wilson and Isak have been afforded more than Mitoma in the last 4. So I really want to leverage that. And then when you consider some of those defences they're playing against, Fulham, Everton, and Sheffield United especially, really good opportunity. So if I was to do that, then I'm doing Son to Saka, captaining him, and Mbeumo to Mitoma. That's 2 of my free transfers used up already, which would mean if I wanted to fix my defence, then it's a -4. Or alternatively, I do Saka to Son to Saka for opportunity's sake, Botman to Tsimikas for obligation's sake, and then you could argue maybe it's a -4 to do Mbeumo to Mitoma. Although, looking at those fixtures, I think over that run, he would probably reward me for that shift there towards some really nice fixtures. So they're the transfers I'm considering right now. The one that I'm most sure about is Son to Saka, because I think that the opportunity there, especially over the next 3 matches, is really big, especially when you consider the captaincy in game weeks 10 and 12 for Saka. Effectively, I'm signing 2 of him over the next 3 game weeks, or 4 of him, 5 of him. I'm not going to captain him against Newcastle. I would captain him probably against Burnley, and I would captain him against Sheffield United, versus having only, 3 Sons over the same period, because I wouldn't captain him for any of the next 3. So that one I'm fairly set on, because even though it's a difficult one from a sort of sentimentality perspective, it's really hard to sell a player who's recently done really well. I'm just trying to be objective about that one. The Botman to Shimikas transfer, I don't like it, but I feel like I might have to do it. I might have to sort of grow up and put my big boy boots on and think, right, let's just do what we got to do here. And then the Mbeumo to Matoma one feels like a bit of a guilty pleasure as well, but also one that I think is going to come off. On balance, will I probably end up taking a -4? Well, stay tuned to Fantasy Football Scout and then all the videos, and then also podcasts, and of course my social media channels as we head into Friday, to see if that's something I've actually done. I quite like it, to be honest. I want to hold off using my wildcard. I still have it in my back pocket. I don't think my team needs it this week. I feel like I can get to an optimised team for the next couple of weeks with that -4 potentially. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I like it overall. Even though the Shimikas one is not that exciting, I think as a package of moves, those 3 together, I think they can potentially work. And we'll just see whether or not I have got the guts to follow it through by the end of the week. Now, as I mentioned already, a lot of the stats we've looked at here come from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. Make sure you sign up in time for Game Week 10. It's an early deadline, and the 30% off is going to be going soon. So make sure you get yourself sorted on that. Now, with that, I will leave you fine, folks, to enjoy the rest of your preparation for Game Week 10, and I shall see you next time. Bye.